So, what is the coronavirus actually doing to our economy, and what will this mean for you? Joining me is the country's top finance writer, Terry McCrann of the Herald Sun. Terry, thanks so much for dropping by. Now, like I say, we already know the coronavirus is a medical emergency. What do you think it's actually going to do to the world economy?
Well, clearly, Andrew, putting aside the medical issues, obviously that's not my patch, clearly this is something we did not need in terms of the impact on the global economy and on our own economy. Our own economy is probably pretty clear-cut, the initial impacts to viewers, tourism, students, various things that flow from people. As yet, we haven't seen any dramatic impact on what we sell to China other than that. You know,
but the ships are still going to and fro.
The ships are still going, the iron ore, the coal, those things, those raw materials. In fact, there's been some consolidation of the prices we've been getting in the last couple of weeks, as the expectations that China's getting on top of it. The one thing I would say absolutely clearly, this is not another GFC. This is not as bad. No, even if you take the worst case perspective on what happens in China and the global environment, this is not going to be as bad as the GFC. But we really don't know how bad it's going to be, what impact it's going to have ultimately on the world economy and on us.
Now, you're saying, right, China has stopped and we've stopped.
Exactly.
People coming here.
And I think we've got to be very careful about loosening that, because the one thing we do not want to get, if we do it too quickly, if we start to get cases breaking out in Australia as a consequence of that, that would be a very bad outcome.
Now, is there a point where we stop sending ships over there or getting ships back, where it actually hits the trade?
I mean, as you said, it looks like it's peaked in China. We really don't know, but the indications are that the other thing that made this strange was that the virus outbreak in China coincided, or the explosion of it, coincided with their New Year holiday break. So they it was easy for them to keep their factories closed longer, obviously to try and contain it. The indications now are that they're beginning to start bringing those back online. Now, if that's the case, you know, this will be a short-term impact in terms of its impact on us, and very importantly, I mean, the other big impact that this could have if it goes on for a long time is supply chains. China is now so important in the global economy in terms of feeding stuff into not just consumer goods, but feeding inputs into factories around the world. And that's the really worrying thing. If this became a real full-blown pandemic and we couldn't get those supply chains across the board, I mean, from industrial products, consumer products, right across the board to pharmaceuticals, all those things now depend on supply out of China.
Now, the government seems to be panicking today. We've got, I think the economy, to be fair, was already not getting out of the first gear, not going to meet all the predictions that we'd been told.
Plus the bushfires.
Then we had the bushfires. Now we've got this. What is this year looking like?
Well, it's going to be a slow year. I don't think you can make a judgment about the bushfires will self-correct once the spending kicks in, the rebuilding kicks in. It'll basically, you know, it obviously hurts people individually, but from the economic perspective, it'll be pretty much a wash through the year.
Except, of course, for the budget surplus that was promised.
Well, it's but it won't be that big a hit on the budget surplus. I mean, and basically, at the end of the day, if we don't have a surplus in this context, I don't think you can either blame the government or say that, oh no, you've got to deliver that surplus and therefore cut back. Clearly, that shouldn't be the case. I don't think I don't read the government as panicking. I mean, obviously they don't like the politics of it. But there's nothing very much that either the government or the Reserve Bank can do to fight the economic impacts of the virus, because, you know, it's about letting the students come into the country, letting the tourists come into the country. It's about those products coming to Australia. So cutting interest rates is not going to suddenly.
No, look, I totally agree with you. I think really the question is a decade of Labor huge spending, the coalition being slow to pull it back, has left us with an empty kitty and probably more vulnerable to shocks than we should be.
Well, exactly, and this is a shock right out of left field. I mean, no one.
Most shocks are out of left field.
But no one would have. I mean, an economic shock like the GFC, you can react to that. And you can expect the government to do things as they did, both here and overseas, back in 2008. But this is not something you can respond to with economic policies.